Good evening.
Good evening.
We are extremely pleased that you are here. It is good to come together for the purpose of co-creating, is it not?
Yes.
What brings you here? What is it you are wanting?
I'm not sure that this is really a question. But last time when I was talking to you about my wrinkles and you told me what you would see when you looked in the mirror, wisdom, and I'm going to quote you. We are a little more practiced at it. We are so much more adoring ourselves that it is not a point of our experience to acknowledge lack in ourselves. So
Feels really good, too.
Pardon?
That feels really good,
Of course
too.
it does. And I know how to do it, really. I don't have any question. I just guess I want us to talk about it because I see moment by moment that I can alter my judgment of myself. And then along with that comes the judgment of other people. It's the same thing.
They go hand in hand, do they not?
They do. Uh-huh.
We were chatting with Esther this afternoon upon the very topic. She said, Abraham, I'm not liking to feel lack about anything. And we said, do not be so hard on yourself because lack is part of the balance of the universe. In other words, the subject of lack is not a negative thing. But your attention to something of lack negatively affects you, you see. And so that may help you to get it into perspective a little bit. In other words, every subject is really two subjects. That is the having of it or the lack of it. And in some things, such as cancer or big green warts on the end of your nose, lack is not a bad thing. You see what we're... In other words, every subject is two subjects. And so your work is to identify what is wanted and then stay on the wanting side rather than the lack side of that equation always. The point that we were making with Esther is we're not wanting her to, or you, to beat up on yourselves about recognizing that you are aware of some lack. But just be more sensitive to the way your thoughts affect the way you feel. And if you find yourself feeling a little bit of discomfort, then you know that you have slided or slid or oozed onto the lack side of the equation. And most of you, that is a very fine line, isn't it? In other words, to be on the side of it that makes you feel good or the side of it that makes you feel bad. Now, if you were really in a neutral place, near the center of the subject, you would not feel any emotion. It is only when you get very strong to one side or the other that you feel either very powerful, negative or positive emotion. And so, upon some subjects, by virtue of your pattern of thought, you more naturally slide to the negative side because you have dug a deeper route. Where on other subjects, you more naturally slide to the positive side because you have dug a deeper rut. And that is what is bothering you a little bit, is that on the subjects where you feel neutrality, you can easily guide yourself to feeling better and better and better about it. But on the subjects where you have already developed a pattern of thought so that you slide easily, so that almost immediately you get yourself feeling negative, that is what you are sensitive to now. We had a very good time with our friend. He had turned upon the television and Esther was sitting and watching it. And as they were moving from one station to another, everything was screaming in agony on one and complaining and shouting on another and open heart surgery on another. In other words, it was just arg, 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 they said, as they passed through the stations. And our friend Jerry said, isn't this fun? It is like standing and just dabbing a little bit of cyanide onto our tongue to see how well we respond to it. And we think it is a good analogy because any time that you are participating within that which you already know by your immediate response to it, then it is good for you to recognize that you are, in a sense, poisoning your experience, if not your apparatus, by giving your attention to that which evokes that sort of feeling within you.
Okay, now you've been talking about reacting, basically. the very action of saying, I adore myself, is something that I have been socialized not to do very strongly.
We understand. We have been socialized to do it.
Yeah, that's where I'm leading. That's where I want to be able to, it's hard for me to even say, I adore myself.
Don't say it out loud and it won't be so hard. In other words, it is your concern about others' response to it that is the big bugaboo for you.
But at any moment, standing by myself in a room, it's hard to say and mean it, but it's a goal of mine.
Then state it as the goal that it is. Any time that you say, I want, what your real objective is to bring your believing into the same direction as your wanting. And so anytime you are saying, I want something, where the believing is far apart, the challenge of it is hindering to you. In other words, if you said, I want $10 million to drop out of the sky and I want it to happen by midnight, your belief is usually so far away from expecting something like that that you squelch your intent in the moment that you release it. And so it is a matter of just building some bridges. In other words, tempering it so that the difference between what you are wanting and what you are believing are not so far apart. Doing things or saying things such as, I want to adore myself. I know Abraham adores me. I want to feel about, you see what we're saying?
And I'm right now going through thoughts about the advantage of adoring myself, the advantage of everyone adoring themselves.
We can give you another way of looking at it, and that is to say, I want very much to have harmony between me and me. It is saying the same thing, because your inner being does adore you. And the only way you will have harmony is when you are adoring you. But the words are softer, and so you can say, I seek this harmony, and then just guide yourself away from thoughts that make you feel bad. And the majority of thoughts that make you feel bad are thoughts that are regarding your own lack. In other words, almost exclusively, when you have negative emotion, it is something to do with that.
And I'm also realizing now that I'm guessing what someone else thinks about me.
What do you think is inflaming all of this?
Well, I think it's the next step, basically, in terms of just enjoying myself.
It is not an easy thing for most of you to hear us say, it is good to adore yourself, because you have been programmed to not be selfish. And that is the reason that we have taken so much time to help you to understand that anything other than adoring yourself is out of harmony with who you are and out of harmony with your reason for existing in this physical body. In other words, it is the reason that we have built quite a platform. We've done a very good sales job, we think, in bringing you to the place of at least accepting that it is logical and that nothing else really makes sense. But what is happening to you is that there are so many physical beings that surround you that are feeling the other way about themselves and therefore about you. Yes. Esther talked with a magnificent woman this morning who is coming into pure harmony with herself. In other words, she is at that place that you are, seeking it intently and really finding it. And what she is finding is happening is that she is filled with such love that it is gushing out of her. She finds herself exuberant in her vocabulary about this and about that, and people who are watching her, people that are working with her, even in some programs that are designed to do just that, are feeling their own lack very strongly. In other words, the happier she is, the more they test her and ask her if she's telling it like it really is. Are you faking this ecstasy that we see you buzzing around in? Is it real? It seems too much to be real, they are saying to her, which caused her to stop for a moment and evaluate, is this real? Well, of course it's real, is her response. It feels so wonderful. It is pure appreciation of life oozing out of me. And Esther said to her, this is not about you. This is about the way they are feeling, about their own feeling good. as they still are not in that place yet of feeling good, and you are, you inflame their feeling of lack. And so they question you. Yours must not be real, they say, because I'm not feeling it. And somehow they think it would make them feel better if they could deny hers. When the reality of it is, she is the stimulus for them. In other words, they do not understand the value that she holds for them. They are still part of the earthly thinking that says, I want you to not excel because I notice the difference between us so pointedly. Have you had...
Albert Schweitzer's code, his key, he felt to this, like boiling it all down, he came up with a phrase called the key to the joyous life or to fulfilling life or to worthy life was to have a reverence for life, a reverence for all life, everything that lived. And so, and a number of people have kind of picked that up after he left, and probably had it before he was here. If you look at life from that way, in other words, his perspective was he could be a joyous, fulfilled being if he didn't take any life unnecessarily. In other words, if he preserved as much life as he could and only took what life he felt was necessary for to preserve his own life, so to speak. So how would that philosophy tie in with somebody who just shoots things, kills things for fun, destroys life for fun?
It doesn't, but then is his philosophy the one that everyone should follow?
Right.
In other words, if he chooses a philosophy of reverence for life, okay, and it harmonizes with him, that is his philosophy.
Good.
But does that mean that anyone else or everyone else should adhere to it?
So in essence, what you're saying, the only thing what's appropriate for me is appropriate for me, but not necessarily for one other of the 5 billion people on the planet.
That is the way we see it.
And each of the 5 billion of us can run our own appropriate operation.
Absolutely.
And still find harmony with ourselves to begin with.
Absolutely.
And perhaps find harmony with some other being.
Usually there is much more point of harmony than there is disharmony. It is your attention to lack that gets you out of harmony with yourself and leads you to be out of harmony with everyone else. If you were adoring yourselves, you would not feel critical of the others. Yep. It is that they stimulate within you an awareness of lack in yourself, and your defensiveness rises up, and then you want to squelch them so that you will feel better. It never works, but you keep squelching them trying, you see. You squelch them with laws, you squelch them with rules, you squelch them with ridicule, you squelch them with physical war. You have found all sorts of ways to attempt to squelch them, but you do not, because you cannot squelch the thought that inspired them to beingness, you see, because it is part of the balance of the universe. We're wanting to go back to the subject of reverence for life.
Thank you.
Because we think it is a very good way of life. And there are many who are seeking it. But instead of identifying and living a reverence for life, what most of you who try it end up doing is worrying about death. In other words, rather than enjoying, and what reverence for life is, by our definition, is living in the moment. In other words, acknowledging life as it is in this moment, you see. But most of you do not enjoy the moment of life because you're so worried about death. You're so worried about the opposite of it. You are guarded, you see. And even this one that you are talking about felt much pain about
Albert
it.
Schweitzer.
Rather than living it and enjoying his balance with himself, a good part of his life he felt great pain as he acknowledged that so many others were not living it that way, and that will get you every time. What is necessary, and we will speak it here, what is necessary for you to understand if you are to be the joyful beings that you intended as you emerged into these bodies? It is necessary for you to understand that what you seek is harmony with you. And that once you find harmony with you, that everything in your world will then fall into place. And until you have harmony with you, until the majority of your day is filled with good feeling, then you will find your